Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That kid is back on the escalator again.
Ain't gonna hurt.
Here's my boomstick!
Game over, man. It's game over.
Welcome to the Bargain Bin. He is your host, Ben Mason.
And he is your co-host, Sandra Luketic. And today we're talking 1964's The Last Man on Earth. We assume if you're listening to this episode, you've already watched the movie. All right, man. I have told you for years about how much I love I Am Legend by Richard Matheson. I actually, we exchanged books and you got a chance to read it for yourself and you enjoyed it too. I can't remember. Is this the first time you've seen this version of that story on film?
No. Let me refresh your memory. So you and I were working at Chapters together, and we were both talking about how our favorite books happen to be postmodernistic writings.
Yes.
Mine being The Time Machine by H.G. Wells, yours being I Am Legend, and we swapped them, and we read, the books, which I don't know if you had read The Time Machine before that or just seen the movies, but I had definitely not had any exposure to I Am Legend.
No, I didn't. I hadn't read The Time Machine, nor had I seen the films at the time.
Fair. So I came back to you telling you how much I enjoyed the book. I was blown away by it. I was kind of half expecting it to be good because, you were so adamant how good it was, but I didn't even anticipate that. So you and I actually did, not in the same day, but we did do a few days where we watched this movie, The Last Man on Earth. Mm-hmm. Another day we watched Omega Man, and then we watched I Am Legend with Will Smith.
I remember Omega Man and I Am Legend watching those with you. I didn't remember watching Last Man on Earth though. Okay, good. All right, so there's nothing new for you. So you kind of knew what you were getting yourself into then.
I had an idea, but I mean, let's keep in mind that we're talking 10, 15 years ago somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
So I haven't seen it since then, and my memory is clearly not as good as it should be. So it was pretty fresh with more of just a few I remember that moments. Which I'll try to remember as we're going through to point some of those out.
Sure. Yeah, I was kind of nervous going into this again because I hadn't watched it probably since then. I guess I thought it had been longer. But it's exactly what I remembered it being, man, and that's I think that's a good thing.
Well, I mean, that depends. If you remembered loving it being what you remembered is absolutely a good thing. If you remembered absolutely hating the movie, well, then, maybe not.
Well, let's just say if I absolutely hated it, I highly doubt I would have picked it.
Are you sure about that? Look at what we do on here. There is a lot of times where we don't necessarily pick the best movies or the movies that were particular.
Hey.
What?
If I pick a movie that's not good, that's because I want to torture you.
Okay, I mean so by that definition, this could have been something that you were aiming for.
Yeah, but you and I both know how I feel about this movie.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, before we get into the plot. I just want to give a shout out to Mike Cote. Left us a comment on our Airborne review. We don't get too many of these yet. So just want to say thank you for your comment. He wrote, first comment, I was looking forward to Air Bud, but great job, guys.
Nice.
So thank you for that. And anybody else who wants to leave us some comments, feedback, their picks for awards, please let us know. We would love to hear from you. So with that being said, Ben, why don't you dive us into this plot?
All right. Well, we start with the sun rising over what is unmistakably Italy, but we're led to believe it's Los Angeles. The city is empty, abandoned cars and dead bodies are strewn about the streets. Church signs read, "The end has come." The camera takes us through town until we arrive at the boarded-up house of Robert Morgan, who is asleep in his bed. The alarm clock sounds and our hero rises. The voiceover line, "Another day, time to get started," sets the tone of what we are to expect. Sorry, go ahead.
Is it just me? Or even for 1964, was it?
Yeah.
Was there not enough, say, boards on the windows to believe that this would have kept people out? Or dishevelment of the facility that he was staying in to indicate that he had been there for, well, I guess you're about to go over it, 3 years or so.
Yeah.
Like, it really didn't look to be in as bad a state of affairs as it should have been. And I know it's me and I'm nitpicking, but I'm like, there's no way hordes of zombies can't break down these shoddily boarded up windows.
Well, we are led to believe that the bedroom where he's sleeping is on the second level, so I can give the lack of boarded up windows a pass. As far as the state of the facilities, I disagree completely. That house looks real fucked up.
Oh, definitely.
Especially when we go into a flashback.
Well, I guess that's subjective, but go on.
Okay. There are makeshift calendars that adorn the walls, some simply written on the paint. 3 years have passed since something atrocious has happened. I don't remember exactly how the book begins, but I feel like this just kind of hits you in the head right away with everything.
It definitely introduces you to the state of the character. Especially with the fact that, obviously this is a big part of it, and we might as well mention it now. A lot of this is done in a way that it's the character doing inner monologues. So voiceovering instead of him actually speaking. I know I Am Legend introduced the dog character early and throughout the movie so that Will Smith could actually verbally communicate with someone. But the tone that they're setting here with, again, like, it's not even like a wall calendar, because nobody would have made any past the year that they were on when it happened. So,
exactly. So
good at
writing.
Yeah, good attention to detail. The fact that he's now doing it on the wall with marker, because if he had like a wall calendar or a flip calendar, that wouldn't make sense. Nobody would have created that. Mm-hmm. Then coupled with the fact that, we're not seeing him moving his mouth. There is such a feeling of isolation. They really capture what the book was meant to represent.
Yes, they really do, man. And like, if you're going to have a film where a good chunk of it is all voiceover, why not get somebody with an amazing voice? So obviously Vincent Price is perfect for this role.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't mention that. Yeah, Vincent Price is our main character, Robert Morgan.
I'm sure there would have been a couple of opportunities to mention that. He gets a lot of screen time. I don't know.
They changed his name from the book.
Correct.
And that throws me every time. Like, I was making notes for this, and I was still calling him Robert Neville the entire time until I hear the Ben character yell Morgan. It's like, God damn it.
Yeah.
And just backtrack through all of my notes, change all of Neville to Morgan.
Seems like a silly thing to change if you're keeping so much the same. Mm-hmm. To just change the last name of the character, but hey, there might have been reasons for it at the time. I mean, the book and movie are long into public domain now, but we don't know what the state of it was in 1964.
The book had only been out for 10 years at that point.
Exactly. So maybe that's just something they couldn't get around.
Well, at least they got the author of the book to co-write the screenplay, so that's good. Yep. Morgan removes the barricade from his door and heads outside, stopping to check on wreaths of garlic hanging in front of the doorway, inspecting any damage to his house, and checking on the generator in his garage.
See, it's the garlic that made me a little bit more hesitant on the other barriers. Because, no, seriously, like, when he goes to open that door, it's a very easy open, right?
It is, yeah.
And I could accept if the barricading is a little bit more shoddy if we saw garlic, like, all around the house, because that's repelling them.
Yeah.
But it's just on the front door, so, yeah, anyway, go on.
Yeah, no, I found that to be a problem too, and I didn't even pick up on it until this viewing of the film, why so little is actually needed, and it's because these creatures, the brain function's incredibly limited. So not many of them actually are aware to go to, say, a window. They're always trying to go to a doorway that they remember going through from the previous life. Yeah,
I know. I'm just thinking if we're going to try and paint a picture of how dire the events are, they're repelled by garlic and mirrors. I would have garlic and mirrors all over the house. I mean, if I was Robert Morgan. I don't know if, again, production costs, maybe they couldn't afford that many props, limited budget. I don't know. But as the character, I would have just, like, covered it all.
It would be all over the inside of the house, too. I wouldn't care.
I'd have mirrors, like, duct tape if I have to, all around the outside of the car, even. Like, anything that I'm using, I would do that for, right? But,
same, man. I planned this out, too. I was like, I would have a row of mirrors inside the door in case they busted their way through. It'd still repel them. Garlic would be covering every archway of every door. Like...
It'd be quite the smell.
It leads me to believe this was really an issue of set design and production budget.
I should clarify, it's still fine. I'm just nitpicking. But, again, the idea is coming across.
It is. He opens the garage door, inspects bodies laying around his property. The voiceover informs us that they, quote, they feed off the weak ones and leave them for the pit. Ominous.
Mm-hmm.
He re-enters the house and prepares himself breakfast before turning on his ham radio and trying to seek out any other survivors. He eventually gives up and checks the front of the house again, the voiceover providing the viewer information that they can't bear to see their own image.
I love that they had him try the ham radio.
Yes.
Because anytime that they come up with a clever way for him to verbalize, makes a starker contrast to the isolation feeling of the inner monologues.
Yeah. It definitely breaks it up. It's a very smart film. It's self-aware in how it's presenting itself. Even taking the vampire lore and mixing it with zombie lore. Like I did see this movie before I read the book for the first time, and at this point in the film, I was pretty sure it was vampires. Obviously, you know, mirrors, garlic, and whatnot. But the fact that the bodies didn't burn up in the sun kind of threw me for a loop, and I was like, all right, well, is this a new type of monster, or are we just not sticking to what every other vampire movie has done? Like, where are we going with this?
There is absolutely elements of that in this, where it feels like they use the label of vampire in order to use some of those repellents, and nothing more. Outside of that, it is kind of creatures of their own creation. Because they're way more aware than a zombie would be, though they have zombie physical traits. They're not as evolved as vampires, at least we know to be.
Yeah.
It really is just a weird amalgamation, and I think it's just so that they can use the weaknesses of vampires and then just forego the rest.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. I mean, we do get one scene of one biting a person, but I mean, that's zombies for you as well, correct? So
absolutely.
He makes a point that at one time eating was pleasurable and now food is just fuel for survival. But he still has things like coffee and orange juice. And I'm pretty sure you're not getting any vital nutrients from coffee. Honestly, probably just save it for some special occasion. But then I was thinking, like, if he is the only person left in the city, he's not really going to run out of coffee.
See, my mentality is that the coffee is not for the pleasure that some people get from coffee. However, the caffeine to keep himself alert, because, I mean, especially if you consider the, you know, the mental situation that he's in, if he leaves the house and he's not alert, that could be the end of him.
Yeah, but we do see that he has no problem sleeping, and he has been through this for, 3 years now. So, I don't know, it might have been a hiccup in the storytelling, but it was good writing that is just kind of flawed.
Yeah, I think that's a minor one that even I could let go.
Okay. Wow. All right. I should tone it down. Another voiceover is prompted when he sees a doll belonging to his daughter. In the worst portrayal of anger I've ever seen, he lightly lobs his coffee can to the floor before stating he has to keep his wits together. He has to find where they hide during the day. There is no emotion behind that at all. It's like he goes to throw it and it just like rolls down the back of his arm almost.
There is a lot of issues that I had in regards to physical acting in this movie.
Oh, God. Only for price, though, for me.
Well, even still, like, there's even a lot of the... I'll get to it when we get to it, but, like, combat, like, even just Ben swinging, like, the 2x4 at the window, like, none of the physical portrayals seem genuine.
I disagree when it comes to Ben. I loved everything that character did.
Yeah,
But
because
I'm
his
more so
name was
talking
Ben.
No, I hate having to talk about my own name when we talk about movies, but I love this.
I'll let you know how it is when we get to my name.
God, now I'm going to have to hunt down one.
You know what? If you do, I'll be impressed. You go right ahead, man.
No, but with Price throwing that can of coffee, I think there was more emotion behind that than when he's going around staking vampires. Because half the time it looks like he's bringing the mallet down on his own wrist and not the actual stake. And there's no force, like no resistance behind it. So you can tell he's just like holding the stake off camera just enough so you can't see what it's pointed at and then just lightly swinging. But there's one part in the movie where there's a montage of him doing that and it's completely silent. But then there's just this one guy off screen goes, ah! And then still more silence after that. Horrible sound editing, but hilarious.
Yeah. The mallet swinging was absolutely awful, and that is
garbage.
It was another example of the physical acting that I'm talking about.
Yeah. He tells us that he's searched half of the city already and has been killing them as he finds them. Although we see a map later on, and he's definitely only at most a third of the way through. We're then treated to his unnecessary stake building setup. My problem here is that I'm pretty sure the stakes don't have to be perfect. It's not shop class. He's not building table legs. I found it completely unnecessary.
But at the same time, what else does he have to do?
I don't know. I'm surprised he had enough time when he wasn't sitting back drinking his coffee and orange juice.
Exactly. Like, there's not, like, if he's not out searching the streets and staking vampires, you sit in your house.
I found it interesting, though. This is where we find out that they're also hunting Neville Morgan as well. See, Morgan. I missed it in my notes. God damn it. But yeah, no, like I find out that they're hunting Morgan too. He packs a bag of steaks, loads up his car with bodies from the property, and drives off. He gets gas from an abandoned tanker and drives to the outskirts of the city where the bodies are dumped into a perpetually burning pit. Which I found kind of cool, but I mean, there's got to be a lot of bodies in there to keep that fire going that long. Even though he himself pours gas on it and throws a torch in, which explodes for some reason, but...
At some point in the 3 years, it would have rained.
Right?
So, whatever. I'm sure he just relights it when it goes out. Maybe that's what they're hinting at. Like,
maybe the gas to reignite, but it's still smoldering pretty well when he gets there.
Yeah. Maybe it's just the fact that pouring the gas is just a visual cue that he is still tending to the fire in some way. Oh, it's getting lower, let's throw some gasoline. Or it rained last night, let's relight it, right? Just the idea that, yes, it's not just self-perpetuating. He's involved in some way. Yeah.
And great filmmaking at this point, too, by not actually showing us inside of the pit, just showing him standing along the edge, which we see later on in the movie with other people as well. Really good use of less is more, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and I think part of that is necessity, too, of the time, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. So they didn't have a lot of money. Probably, I mean, that was probably just a ditch anyway, right?
Yeah, but it really showed that the filmmakers in this case were very creative with what they had to work with.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of people would just kind of shrug this movie off, seeing like it's black and white, 64. Movies were in color at that point. Why would they still stick to black and white? Well, it's cheaper at the time, and if you don't have a lot of money and you are hiring well-known actors like Vincent Price, that's where the money's going. So you have to be smart with how you spend the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Morgan goes back into the city and stops by a supermarket for garlic, and points out a really interesting thing here, which I missed before, and that he's only taking the garlic out of the fridge that he needs, so the rest will last. And I never thought about the fact that garlic is finite in a situation like this, unless you know how to grow it yourself.
Which you think in the 3 years he could have taken some time to learn.
Yeah.
I mean, my front lawn might have been a moat of garlic bushes.
Is it garlic bushes?
I don't know. I just used a generic
you know
word,
how-
hoping that
do you
I would
know how
cover
to
my
grow
bases.
garlic?
Well, if I had 3 years, I'd probably learn.
Oh, I'm pretty sure you've had more than 3 years.
No, I mean for the requirement. I don't need garlic in that quantity. Why would I learn that?
Fair enough.
Because
I'll let you
that
pass
garlic,
this time.
that garlic in the fridge, we're supposed to believe that even after 3 years, even refrigerated, it was still fresh.
That's also a good point. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So in this
That's a fucking awesome fridge then.
So in this situation, yeah, I might have gone to the library. I'm sure I wouldn't have had to worry about a late fee and just taken a book on how to grow garlic. And I would have made an entire moat of garlic in my front lawn.
I also would have gotten rid of the beef hanging in that fridge because that's been there for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to say though, the sets, even the supermarket, looked really good. Actually, did feel abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
Another stop this time to grab mirrors. I myself have never seen a mirror store, but that's convenient. Have you? Have you ever seen a store that just sells mirrors?
I
Was
never
that a
went-
thing in the 60s?
I never went shopping in the 1960s. Maybe what we know as electronic stores now were mirror stores back then. That was their entertainment.
I guess, yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's an Italian thing.
They-
but now it's
Yeah,
time for the
they
hunt.
like to look at themselves. As they should. They're beautiful people.
Morgan wakes up and stakes multiple vampires. Not himself waking up, he wakes them up and stakes them. Even though they haven't been acknowledged as full-on vampires in the narrative yet,
Mhm.
I don't know. Those bodies are also dumped into the fire pit. You think, though, that he would try and find a larger vehicle for runs like that? A station wagon doesn't really seem overly practical for hauling multiple corpses. So he's just staking them, loading up the car, driving to the pit, throwing them in the fire, going back to the city, killing more, loading up the station wagon again, and just back and forth. Like, there's enough abandoned vehicles. You think he could find, like, a larger truck for that purpose?
Yeah, I guess.
No, there's no guessing. He would be able to. He just didn't.
Maybe he doesn't know how to drive a truck. Maybe he wants to be a little more inconspicuous.
Oh yeah, the great automatic transmissions of the 1960s Italian station wagon. Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking about it, how big is this pit? Because
It has to be massive.
it's been being used for 3 years.
Yeah. More than.
If in one day he stakes and throws 3 people in there, which is how much we see in the montage here, if I'm not mistaken, and we're led to believe that's one day, plus you get the 2 that he got out of his front lawn, so 5 a day times 3 years? That's a lot of bodies.
Oh, we're led to believe it's more than 5 bodies a day.
Yeah. And they were already starting to throw people in there in the flashback sequence.
Yeah, they weren't even vampires at that point. They just died.
I don't even know if the Grand Canyon would be large enough.
Oh, that'd be interesting. A more American version. A better American version than the Will Smith one.
Yeah, but I'd rather see a group of zombies that can fill the Grand Canyon coming out of it than going into it.
Yeah, I mean, if you got the World War Z zombies, like, those things scale everything.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah. As the sun begins to set, Morgan returns home and preps his garlic wreaths to put out for that night. Now all he can do is wait for the sun to rise the next morning. Zombie-esque vampires descend upon the house, calling for him to come outside. He tries to drown them out by playing loud jazz records. And this is where we first really hear the voice of Ben. And hearing him calling out for Morgan is incredibly creepy. I found it otherworldly, almost disturbing. I thought it was perfect.
This is a very distinct voice as well. I mean, you got two leads that both have very distinct voices.
And the weird thing is, like, Price has that very nasally, higher-pitched, unmistakable voice.
Mm-hmm.
And the actor that plays Ben in vampire mode, terrifyingly deep and creepy.
Yeah.
Almost emotionless. But when we encounter him in his human form, classic Hollywood leading male, like, like smooth voice. It's strange. It's a really cool dichotomy.
Yeah, they're two bodies away from a barbershop quartet.
No. Morgan wakes up from a nightmare.
Oh, no. Hold on. We got to go back for a second. Sorry.
What did I miss?
When Ben is calling out to Robert, and I can agree on the voice being eerily appropriate, but he is swinging a 2x4 at that window with
4x4.
4x4 with the same force that Vincent Price was staking vampires with. Like, he's just gently rapping on the table.
Oh, yeah. He's not even really fully swinging his arm. He's clutching the wood with his hand and just turning his torso.
Yeah, it really feels like, I'll go back to the action sequences, it feels like they need to move with a little bit more urgency in all of them. It just feels like everything in the more, I don't know if you would call swinging a stake in a montage or at a window action, but it feels like it's all going in slow motion. Yeah,
and that really works for the vampires. It does not work for Morgan. Honestly, it's like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons.
Yeah, I can see that.
When he's like talking about giving someone a thrashing, and he's just lightly like brushing their chest with the front and backs of his hands.
Yeah, it's like Mr. Burns is slapping Orange Cassidy as he's giving him kicks.
But no, I do have to say, like, I think that works perfectly for the vampires, because there are more zombies than there are vampire, really.
In my opinion, yes.
Yeah. Morgan wakes up from a nightmare in which a woman is screaming about not being able to see. He laments the beginning of another disheartening day of routine. They do capture that very well, also, I find.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of hopelessness.
Yeah. Very, very dark for this movie. Captured extremely well in the book, and I never realized how well they'd do this in this film, because I don't feel that in either of the 3 other film adaptations of this I've seen.
No. But I don't think they were going for it as well.
Well, they definitely tried in the Will Smith one and just failed miserably.
Yeah.
Morgan snaps when trying to sharpen more stakes and takes off in the car. He drives to a church, unlocking the door and lighting candles at the altar. We see a stone coffin, I guess? I don't want to call it a tomb, because it's not really. Sitting in front and center, and we realize that Morgan has been keeping the corpse of his wife safe in the church. Reminiscing over the lost love of his life, he passes out only to wake up after the sun has set. Flees the church, fighting off vampires in an attempt to make it back to his car. He succeeds, but returns home to find it under siege. Cool storytelling here. Poorly filmed because there's obvious day for night shots, and it really takes away from the suspense for me. But I get it. It's 1964, low budget, probably next to no shooting time, so they had to make do with what they had. But it really did take away from the suspense for me.
There's also a few issues in a few of the driving scenes specifically where they mistakenly show the wrong time of day.
Yeah. Also, the driving scenes, when you actually see him in the car, you can tell it's just people standing outside the car rocking it back and forth to make it look like it's driving down a bumpy road.
Yeah, and I think that's why we have some issues with day and night. Because some of those scenes, like when he's driving during the day to stake vampires, they go to the car and it's just dark behind him, like they put a tarp there, and that's why when then they show the outside of the car, it's daytime, and when it looks like he's in the car, it looks like it's night, because they're trying to just, I guess, flush out the scenery around it to show that he's like to cover that he's not actually moving.
Yeah, I feel like there are different production crews working on this too, because there is like an American version and an Italian version. I don't know. I think some writing was changed and maybe a bit of direction, but I don't know if that might have just been adding to confusion, because those are some pretty noticeable mistakes. You think people would catch that, even like a continuity editor?
Yeah, but maybe that's just something that they couldn't do, right? Like if they just...
It's entirely possible.
If they literally just didn't have the budget to do a shot of the car driving in the daytime, like fixed to it somehow or something, then that might have just been the best they could do with what they had.
Yeah, we'll go with that. It's acceptable.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, the thing is, a movie of this time, even in retrospect, it's hard to go onto the internet and find details on all of this, right? So we can't say like we could with a modern movie, oh, there was this issue with budget and this issue with production, right? Things like that. So it is a bit of an unknown. So I'm going to choose to give them a benefit of the doubt here because it is a low-budget movie filmed in Italy.
Yeah. I can't argue it. Still a solid film so far.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Morgan fends off the horde with a mirror and makes it inside the house. And I love how Ben is just swinging that 4x4 at him the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Not really hitting him, just turn that torso. That night, Morgan sets up his projector and gets piss-loaded while watching home videos of his family, eventually breaking down into maniacal laughter and then eventually sobbing. Also, there is no fucking way these are home movies. I don't know if you noticed that. Completely strange angles that are unrealistic and professional circus footage.
And conversations that nobody would have in...
Nope.
Or sorry, no, not conversations. Shots, right? Like, who's filming them sitting in the audience of the circus?
Also, the footage he's watching is filmed more professionally than the movie that we're watching. I mean...
You should have hired that guy.
Come on now. Also interesting here is how he snaps out of it when he hears Ben outside. And this makes me wonder a lot about the brain function, which is addressed later on in the movie. But at this point, I was kind of like, how dumb are these vampires? Because Ben has already chased him into the house. And now he's still hitting the house at the windows with the 4x4 saying, "Morgan, are you here, Morgan?" Like, well, yeah. You saw him go there. You chased him in.
Maybe he climbed out of a window on the other side. We don't know.
Maybe. That's why they're not boarded up well. Easy escape.
There you go. We find a solution.
Well, it's time for a 24-minute long flashback.
You know what?
I hate the flashback use, but here it makes perfect sense because it's the only way to get more actors into it.
Yes, and without him just monologuing the origins, which would carry on way too long if that was the case.
It would. It just feels like a flashback that's almost half an hour long. Almost feels like another movie within the movie.
I prefer that they do it this way, though, than to start the movie like that.
No, I agree. I have no problem with there being a flashback. It's just they cram so much in. And this is 1960s European filmmaking, right? Like, there is just dead air and, like, lasting visuals that don't need to be on the screen that long.
Fair enough. Before we get into the flashback, because that's a major pivot, why don't we pivot to a quick message from our friend Tim?
Smooth.
Knights and Nerds is not just an actual play D&D podcast with an original campaign being played by a group of friends who tolerate each other. It's also a podcast where I, the Dungeon Master, talk about how I'm adapting to the choices the players make, as well as revealing to you, the audience, the complex story and deadly twists that I have in store for my players. Find us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Spotify, or at knightsandnerds.com.
And we're back.
All right, time to dig into this flashback.
Can I say something before we get into the flashback?
Yes.
If I had like my way to make this a little bit more of an ideal circumstance, and if they had the budget, I almost wish that the flashback was in color.
Okay.
Right? So just to set a tone of a different time, and then maybe even getting towards like the end of the flashback when things are becoming more dire. You know, like how in
more washed out.
Yeah, like how in Wizard of Oz Oz was in color and black and white was outside in Kansas. I feel like if they had the budget, again, I know that that's probably not feasible, but just in hindsight, and if I had my like wish list of how to make this movie better, would be to make the flashback, which is showing a happier time, to be a little bit more colorful and become more washed out until we hit the point of black and white when the world goes to shit.
Yeah.
But that is not the case. That's just me putting in a little bit of an asterisk there. Go ahead.
No,
buddy.
I think that's a good idea. I'm just trying to think of how vibrant movies were in '64. Keep in mind this movie's 57 years old. No, I think that is a good idea. Yeah, and as the flashback progresses, it gets a little bit more and more washed out, and eventually taking us back to the black and white. That's a great idea.
Honestly, if they did a remake, I would even almost encourage them to do some black and white in a similar way, even in a modern movie.
Who would dare remake this movie?
Well, I mean, who would dare even do? Outside of say a well-known movie like say Sin City or something like that, that's doing it a little bit more artistically. But like, who would even dare do like a half black and white movie today anyway? That would be a bold move, right? But I would even almost at that point say maybe they should. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, go on. I'm just dwelling on nothingness right here.
All right, flashback time.
Okay.
It's Morgan's daughter's birthday party. All of the kids are playing outside, and Morgan is filming. Of course, his award-winning filming.
Mm-hmm.
Pre-vampire Ben shows up.
Wait, hold on a second.
What?
When he's watching the film earlier in the movie,
Yeah.
do we see any shots of the birthday party?
No.
But they show that the birthday party's being filmed.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Maybe he has a bunch of reels of film, man.
Okay, yeah, my bad, man. Go ahead.
We find out that Ben was indeed a part of Morgan's life before the vampire apocalypse.
Oh man, I just had another idea.
I don't care about your ideas anymore. Shut up.
I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. What's your idea?
Well, we transition from him watching the reels, right? So picture this. He's watching the reels. He falls asleep or something like that. And the camera pans back to what he's watching, which starts the birthday party scene, and then it fades into the birthday party scene being actually live.
Moving on.
All right. Whatever.
He shows Morgan a newspaper article about a plague that is claiming hundreds of lives in Europe and could now be airborne. Ben and Morgan argue over the validity of the news. I swear to God I didn't pick this movie because of current events. I really didn't. Morgan explains how he's never seen anything like this virus and nobody knows how to kill it.
You didn't pick this movie because of current events?
No, I didn't.
It's a little eerie, though.
I know, it's a pure coincidence. As time progresses, we see both Morgan's wife and daughter fall victim to the virus. He heads into work at the Mercer Institute of Chemical Research, where it's shown that all of the theories about the virus are slowly being disproven. He and Ben talk about its rapid infection rate, and Ben questions why they're burning all of the bodies instead of burying them. Now, this I found weird, because he's a scientist, and he should know about incineration.
Yeah.
When it comes to virology. But all right.
Maybe he's just like an administrative employee in the office, or
maybe they just hired him for his good looks.
That's possible. We need a guy to do our PR statements.
Yeah, we need a good-looking guy to spice up this nerdery.
That face, that voice, you're the one delivering the bad news, my friend.
Somehow the topic of vampires existing arises. Ben's a believer, Morgan is not. He does bring up interesting points about the infected being tired during the day and starting to avoid sunlight, which is a really smooth way of inserting the idea of vampire lore.
Mm-hmm, yep.
Later, Morgan sees a special report from the governor on the news. He states that if any member of a household becomes sick, they must notify the health department. Morgan refuses to do so, even when his daughter loses her vision.
Well, yeah, because, I mean, it's not even well-guised at this point that if you report it, they're just gonna get killed.
Oh, yeah.
Who in that situation would want to just then call up and say, yeah, this person's infected. Please come kill my family.
Yeah, but it does give you a wicked sense of paranoia and fear that your neighbors might report you for having a sick loved one that you're refusing to acknowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Super cool. Not only did they tackle isolation and alienation incredibly well, but the paranoia of being around other people also. Later, Morgan sees a special... Oh, wait, I already just said that. Anyway, sorry about that. As he's leaving the house... I was getting too into it. Leave me alone. As he's leaving the house, he sees a military truck across the street. Wrapped bodies are being loaded into the back to be carried off and burned. Morgan stops to pick up Ben on the way to the lab, and this is where he first notices the mirror and garlic hanging on a door. Ben refuses to leave his house and is going into full-on survivor mode.
Yep.
I would like to see more of the Ben character at this point in the story. I understand why we don't, but I would be very curious if they were to ever do not a remake, but like a reboot of this movie, kind of carry it from the perspective of somebody who is turning.
I would almost prefer if the house that Morgan is in during the black and white portions is Ben's house. Because
that's a brilliant idea.
He finds out that in this time when Ben is locking himself up, refusing to go to work, he's also stockpiling provisions and he's starting to barricade.
Prepping everything.
Because he's the one that has the belief in the vampires, where Morgan is maybe even just trying to convince himself, saying no, no, no. And then he realizes when it goes down, Ben was right, and he was the one that was prepared, right?
That's an amazing idea. Absolutely amazing idea. Because I don't even think we get to see a point in the film where he full-on accepts the fact of the vampires. We just go from him not believing to him believing.
Whereas, like, if he's in Ben's house, that means that he is essentially accepted Ben's theories because he's utilizing Ben's resources.
That's a fantastic idea.
Oh, okay. Now I have a fantastic idea.
I apologize for earlier, my friend.
I could redo this movie really well, I think.
I think so, too. I'm liking these ideas.
Keep going.
The lab has been abandoned except for Morgan and his boss. Things are just getting worse and worse, and when he arrives at home later that night, Morgan sees a military truck leaving his address. The same kind of truck he saw hauling bodies earlier. When he gets inside, he finds his wife staring off blankly and his daughter missing from her room. She died, and the health authority was called.
This got me, man. This got me.
Well, especially being a parent, it would affect you differently.
I'm pretty sure I went and gave my daughter a nice big hug after watching this movie.
Like, don't worry, I would never report you. Then you've got a vampire outbreak in an apartment building. Bigger picture, my friend. Bigger picture. Morgan races to the pit, trying to stop his daughter's body from being burned. He's apprehended by military police and sent back home defeated.
I think that it's probably going to be an underappreciated line, but the military figure who's trying to stop him even says, "My family's in there," right? Yeah. It's a very, I don't know, it's an easy line to miss, but it's a very impactful line because even the people that are doing this don't want to be doing it. They're impacted by it. Like, it is widespread beyond our protagonist.
It's organized panic. Like, everybody's doing not necessarily what they want to do, but what they feel they have to do to try and save everybody else.
Yep.
This is also where we see, or at least we get a really good look at the kitchen and the rest of Morgan's house when it was still functional and very well kept. Because when we go back to it later, or if you start the movie from the beginning, you see there's like old electrical wires running across the ceiling where like light bulbs hanging, everything is filthy. I mean, the man's got a lot of time. You think he could clean a little bit.
Yeah, what else are you going to do?
Yeah. Later at the house, Virginia screams about not being able to see and promptly dies face down on the bed.
I found this a little quick.
It was very quick.
Like a lot.
They drag out the whole infection of the daughter for quite a while. And I mean, like, we see Virginia getting sick, but it's more like, I'm tired. Cough, cough. I'm very tired. And then it's, I can't see, dead.
Yeah.
Whereas with the daughter, Kathy, it was Kathy, right? Yeah, Kathy. Losing her vision was just one step partway through the infection.
Yeah.
And eventually she died.
Yeah.
Like, they definitely ran with that story way too quickly.
Yeah.
Morgan swears he won't let them put her body in the pit. He wraps her up and takes her to a field for burial. Now, I don't remember this scene coming up, but I was very confused. I'm like, wait a minute. We already know that her body's in the church. And I don't know how I forgot this scene, because this scene is amazing.
Okay.
Later that night, in what I consider to be a horrifying scene. Morgan is standing in the living room having some whiskey, and he hears a woman outside whispering for him to let her in. He goes to the window but doesn't see anybody. He next checks the front door, and when he gets there, the doorknob is slowly being turned back and forth from the outside. He demands to know who's there but gets no answer, so he opens the door, and Virginia's reanimated corpse staggers through the entrance calling his name.
Yeah.
Wicked. That is a great scene. And the end of our flashback.
Yeah, that flashback. I mean, we went through it pretty quickly, but like you said, it does drag a little bit.
This is an hour-and-a-half long movie, and the flashback was 24 minutes.
Yeah. But at the same time, you have to pad it a bit, because
it is placed well.
I don't think that they could have padded the rest as well. So, I don't know.
Yeah.
Just kind of a necessity.
Yeah, this could very easily have been an hour-long film. But I'm while it does drag here and there, I'm glad that it is padded the way it is.
Yep.
Outside, Ben and his vampire buddies are beating the shit out of Morgan's car, all while Ben's telling Morgan they're going to kill him. Bit of a tonal shift, but I thought it was pretty entertaining.
Gotta hit something with that stick, I guess. I don't know.
I love how, I get smashing the car. They understand that's what he's using to leave and get back now that they've seen him driving it from the other night. So I get smashing it, taking out the windows and the wheels and whatnot. But there's one vampire who's just ripping out the back seat. That's not really functional by any means. Try driving without this. Where are you going to put your bodies now? Oh, wait, there's more room? Shit.
I was just about to say that. Oh, the front seat's intact? Oh, you just gave me more cargo space.
Stuffing more of your pals in here tomorrow morning, asshole.
That spot's for you.
The next morning, Morgan goes outside to assess the damage. It's time to go car shopping, and he gets the exact same car. He says, a station wagon will have to do. No, it doesn't. We've been over this. There are abandoned cars everywhere. Get something more practical, but build something up so they can't tear it apart easily, or get a backup and keep that in the garage, or even maybe a neighbor's garage. And this is where I brought up, why does he even stay in that house? They know he's there. Go somewhere else during the day.
Yeah, there's plenty of time in the day to set up a new place with garlic and mirrors and boards.
Yeah, the vampires only go there because they know that's where he lives. Go somewhere else, board up the windows more so they don't see the lights on. Ben's gonna still think you live there, man. He'll watch you go in the fucking house and then forget you went in the house. He's not gonna track you down.
You could have done a much better job outsmarting these guys. And I mean, I know it's the 60s, but I'm pretty sure there was probably things like police departments, facilities that are more fortified in the first place that he could have stayed at.
I brought that up later on in my notes, too. I understand the vampires are suffering from lowered brain function, but, Morgan's not doing that well himself, and he's a fucking scientist. You'd think he'd have a bit more ingenuity. I don't know.
You'd think.
It's a major problem I have with this movie, but it kind of makes me like the movie more. Little things like that.
Like he's grasping onto his home?
Yeah, exactly. Returning home, Morgan gets out of his new wagon and sees a dog running around his lawn. Morgan's in pure amazement. Never thought about that before, but we haven't seen any other animals post-outbreak, right?
Nope.
Yeah, that's cool. He chases after the dog, trying to get it to stay. And I feel like this is the first time we can say, we truly feel Morgan's loneliness. We felt his loss before. We knew he was alone, but we never knew he was lonely. Two very different things, in my opinion.
I mean, definitely the excitement, the attempt to grasp onto the dog as a living thing to kind of rekindle his hope comes through, and it definitely shows that, yeah, at some point he had lost this.
Yeah, he's so happy when he sees the dog, and as soon as it takes off, you see the pain in his face and how hurt he feels all of a sudden. And he runs all over the city looking for this dog. And actually, this is a good point. This is like, while he's looking for the dog, this is where he starts stumbling upon bodies of vampires that have been staked by people other than himself.
Yes, and they're using metal stakes instead of the wooden that he's been creating.
Yeah, it looks like almost like rebar or something.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it definitely goes to show that, yeah, you didn't do this.
It's a great reveal. He returns home pondering who these people are, where are they hiding, why hasn't he seen them? He tries the radio again, hoping to make contact. There's no answer, but he hears the dog outside, which is now whimpering outside the window. And I'm not entirely sure how the dog was injured, but pure joy covers Morgan's face, and he slowly exits the house, trying not to spook the dog. As I just said, the dog's wounded, but Morgan picks him up and does his best to clean him up. Night has fallen, though, and Ben has returned to smash against the door. Dog hides in fear and understanding of what lurks outside, which I thought was pretty cool, too. I don't think they really needed Vincent Price to voice the dog's understanding. It came across in the actual visual itself. Morgan does his best to calm the dog, but it's a thinly veiled attempt at reassuring himself, I guess. That's why he's doing it, reassuring himself that everything will eventually be all right. He pauses, stands up, and checks the dog's blood under the microscope, discovering that the dog is also infected. And then we get another heartbreaking scene, which is impressive for this 1964 science fiction horror film. The next day, we see Morgan has staked the dog and is digging a grave for it.
Yeah.
That was harsh, man. I'm not normally one to be like, oh no, they killed the dog. It totally got me in this movie.
It got me in a way, but it also lost me in that it doesn't look like that stake is actually penetrating anything.
Yeah, no, it didn't look great. It was more the motion, knowing that happened in the story.
Yeah, it's clearly just resting atop the bag, but I get the idea.
I do like, too, though, that it meant that he couldn't just look at the dog and stake it. He had to have something that covered it before he was willing to kill the dog.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people probably didn't put that two and two together.
Yeah.
But the fact that the stake is on the outside of the bag indicates that he had to do it that way, right?
And he was just struggling the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
This character is amazing. I love this character. I love this book. I love this story. After covering the dog's body with dirt, Morgan looks up and sees a woman walking toward him in the distance. The two make eye contact, and the woman runs, with Morgan in tow, calling out that he won't hurt her.
Yeah.
He catches up to her and tries to rationalize with her, saying that he isn't one of them because he's out in the daylight. And he asks if she wants to go back with him, or wait and face the vampires when they come out at night. She reluctantly follows him home. Kind of a weird reveal.
He's pretty sure of himself. Like,
extremely sure of himself, even though he's failed miserably.
You come with me, or you're going to die. You realize she's alive after 3 years. She was probably doing something right.
Yeah, she looks fucked up, though, man. Like, all of her clothes are ripped and everything. She looks kind of out of sorts, not really knowing where she is.
I get that. But again, she somehow made it to this point.
Yes. They return to Morgan's house. He preps tea while she slowly fixes her hair in a mirror. She reaches into her waistband and pulls out a small box, examines it, and puts it back. I have a problem with this, which I will cover in a second here.
Okie dokie.
She rummages through a dresser and finds a shirt to replace the torn one she was found in. The two sit down for tea, and she introduces herself as Ruth Collins. Morgan is wary of her, so he grabs a wreath of garlic and holds it up to her. She panics and tells him it's making her sick. So he accuses her of being infected, but she denies it. She says that she's always had a weak stomach. She saw her husband ripped apart and she ran, hiding at night. And he chased her across a field and held garlic in her face. That doesn't mean she's infected.
Yeah.
She tries to run, but he grabs her. He offers to test her blood, but she keeps telling him not to touch her. Both calming down, they try to have something to eat, but she can't. They banter about the infected. Morgan says he's not overly afraid of them. He protects himself against them because there's so many. Individually, they're weak, mentally incompetent, like an animal after a famine. They discuss Ben Cortman and how he was like a kid brother to Morgan, but when he finds him, he'll stake him just like all the others. Which kind of led me to believe that we just saw the last shred of humanity in Morgan. Because even though he longs for happier times, he's completely willing to just kill the remnants of his previous life.
Yes,
I mean,
but
it's survival, but
there's also an argument to be made that maybe not the humanity, but the understanding that that's not Ben anymore, right? Because he's now a vamp zombie outside of his house every night telling him he's going to kill him. Like, that's not the same person anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, there's parts of this movie now that kind of fall apart for me. That was kind of one, because I feel like you could interpret that in different ways, but there wasn't an actual intended purpose for the line. Kind of like when Ruth questions how and why Morgan survived, which I'm like, to anybody making this movie, this should be well known that it's a red flag, but it's delivered in a way that they almost seem oblivious to it themselves, and I don't think that's good filmmaking. I think they just kind of messed this one up, because anybody who doesn't really know what's happening up to this point now knows.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Morgan says that he believes he built up an immunity when he was bitten by a bat in Panama. He thinks that the bat may have had the virus long enough that its immune system built up a resistance to the virus, and that was passed along to him as well. Ruth then questions whether or not Morgan thinks she's infected. He says it's easy to find out. She's afraid that he'll kill her if it turns out she does have the virus. He says that if he had the right equipment, they might be able to contain the virus and stop it from spreading. I don't understand why he thinks this, because he has not been able to do it yet. We have no reason to believe he can. She shuts it down, saying that he doesn't have the time, and then leaves the room. Ruth begins coughing and becomes visibly weak, which we've seen other people suffer earlier in the film. Well, in the flashback anyway. She reaches into her waistband again and produces the box, this time removing a syringe from it. Morgan walks in just as she's about to inject herself. Turns out that she was one of the vampires, but they've figured out a cure of sorts. A mixture of a vaccine that has infected blood in it, and the virus feeds upon the blood, but the vaccine itself keeps it isolated and stops it from multiplying. So even though Morgan said he would be able to do that and hasn't been able to, it shows that somebody out there did do exactly what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
When Ruth says, we have it for some time, or we've had it for some time, now Morgan freaks out. Who exactly are we? He then gets incredibly defensive, saying that he thought she was alone and he was going to cure her, and now he wants the truth. This seems incredibly selfish, too. It's like he needed to be the one to save anybody that was left. Like, he can't let go of the fact that he couldn't save his family or his friends, that he failed as a scientist and as a protector. And I thought if they were going to take this route, fucking drive it home, but they just abandon it right there.
I mean, it's understandable why he would feel that way. He spent the last 3 years thinking that he was the only one left. You're going to develop some sort of selfish complex there.
No, I get that, but they've hit you over the head with everything else up until this point. If this was actually the intent for these lines, you think they would have done the same here and not just left it up to interpretation.
Fair enough.
Sorry, man. I feel like I'm just ranting here. Do you want to, chime in on anything?
No, man, I'm good. I'm jumping in when I want to.
All right, cool. It turns out that Ruth is actually a spy sent by the others to find out if Morgan knows any more information than they do. Yeah, they're infected, but they're still alive. The plan is to rebuild a society, kill all the vampires, and start anew. Morgan assumes they want him to join them, but Ruth points out that will never happen, because to them, he is a monster. He is a legend in the city, moving around in the day and hiding at night, the exact opposite of what they do, and their only proof of his existence is the bodies that he leaves behind and doesn't burn. Many of the vampires that he killed throughout the day were actually survivors that had been given the vaccine, and they're still wary of the daylight. It tires them out, so they just wander at night and sleep during the day. And Morgan had no idea. And I mean, really, how could he? All he knows is human and vampire at this point.
Yeah. I feel like it's on them to tell him we're not.
Yeah. It leads me to believe, too, I don't know, do they actually cover this in the movie? I think they do in the book, that they've been monitoring him through his use of the radio.
I don't think anything was mentioned about the radio, to my knowledge.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure in the book, from what I remember, is that's how they know he's around. Because he keeps announcing things on the radio. So they know there's somebody out there, and they're actually spending their nights trying to figure out where he's hiding.
Go to the one house where all the vampires are trying to break the door down.
Have you guys checked down the street there where that one guy said, "Morgan, come out, Morgan"? Maybe Morgan's in there.
You know, at night when it's dark and there's only one house with light in the entire city, go to that house.
Put money on the fact you might find something.
Yeah. Notice how all of the other houses went dark in the last 3 years, and there's one still going. Go there.
Yeah. Well, there's something here too. Let's switch that around. That night that Morgan is at the church and falls asleep next to his wife's coffin.
Yeah.
He wakes up, it's night, and then he's got to flee back to his house.
Correct.
Now, I understand he's scared and trying to flee the vampires. The vampires walk slower than your average human. I'm sure he'd be looking around as he's driving. Just because these survivors are wary of sunlight, it tires them out, so they're up and active during the night, doesn't mean they don't need lights. How is he not noticing any other, clues that people are up moving around, need to see where they're going? Maybe the group of survivors is just so small that they're so condensed he wouldn't even notice, but I always found that strange.
See, I thought about that a little bit, and then I thought maybe that has something to do with them going blind when they're initially getting the sickness. And
good call.
That maybe somehow that gives them night vision, for example, and that's why they can see at night. They don't need aid, and maybe that's one of the reasons why they don't like the daytime is because, right, the light burns their eyes or something like that. I don't know.
Well, if his theory is true in that he's immune because of a bat that bit him, maybe it's sonar. So the survivors are just wandering around at night screaming, trying not to walk into things.
Well, then you would hear the sounds.
Exactly.
Oh, I don't know. We're diving too far into that one.
All right. Ruth tells him that the survivors are coming for him that night, and the only reason she's there is to prevent him from leaving. She pulls a gun on him, and he urges her to pull the trigger, but she can't, falling onto the floor and passing out from the infection. Morgan takes her gun and goes to the next room, pondering his next move, and then goes in, grabs her, and places her on the couch and begins a blood transfusion between the two of them. Ruth awakens to find Morgan is cured of the virus. Now, he does this by showing her reflection.
Okay.
We've already seen that she can look into a mirror and see her reflection. Because she's already looked into the mirror and fixed her hair.
Oh, I didn't even put that together.
So this does nothing. And I don't know if that was a mistake or if there's some sort of plot device here that I'm missing.
Maybe at that vaccine that she was taking
keeps her more grounded on the human side.
Yeah, and she can look in the mirror, and then the reason that maybe because she didn't get a chance to take it, right? Morgan stopped her, that she should be fearful of it because, oh no, I haven't had my injection today. The mirror is gonna hurt. Wait, it doesn't, and I haven't had my injection, right?
Okay, that makes sense.
But again, like you said, we shouldn't have to be assuming some of this stuff.
Yeah, that seems direct enough that they could have just told us that.
Yeah.
She wants to leave and inform the others since they're coming to kill him, but he tells her to wait until tomorrow for some stupid reason.
This might have been the stupidest part of him, entirely.
Yeah. Why? Like, she told you straight up, like, you now know that there are people out there who have remained, like, cognitive function. They know where he is. Their plan is to kill him. And she keeps saying they. So we know there's more than one. So let's assume there's at least a small group of people going to kill him. She has a gun. Safe to assume they all have weapons too. Why would he just be like, we'll wait until tomorrow?
Yeah. At the very least, try to escape or something. Get out of there.
Yeah. Not even, like, they don't even try to barricade anything further.
No.
But outside, Ben's figured out how to destroy a mirror and forces his way into the house. Drags Ruth outside and bites her, which I thought, okay, there's another bit of vampire lore. But as we were talking earlier, I'm like, oh, it's also zombie lore. Never mind.
But she's already infected.
Yeah. I don't know. Morgan runs outside to save her just as the survivors arrive. Ruth urges Morgan to flee, and Ben has the biggest what the fuck expression on his face. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie. I actually did laugh out loud there. Like, the look in his face is like, uh-oh. Anyone else see this? What's going on?
This isn't what we've been seeing for the last 3 years.
Yeah, and it's weird too, because the survivors start taking out all the vampires, and Ben's like, no, I'm gonna make my way to the roof. I don't like any of this. So, like, if you're that smart now, why aren't you that smart earlier? I don't know.
That's a good question. I do not have an answer.
But they do shoot him off the roof. Morgan runs off and the survivors pursue. He runs into the police station, and this is what I said before. There is a police station. Set up camp there. They can break a mirror with a 4x4. Just tie garlic on the bars. You're fine.
Yeah.
He goes to the police station, grabs more weapons, killing a few survivors along the way. Throws tear gas grenades to escape, but really all he's doing is showing his path of escape back to the church. The survivors swarm the church, and Morgan, now suffering from gunshot wounds, stumbles back toward the altar. One of the survivors throws their weird rebar spear that digs into Morgan's stomach. Bleeding out, he takes one last stand, telling the survivors that they're all freaks and mutations and that he's the last man, and then collapses on the ground. Ruth runs to the dying Morgan, who is trying to comprehend why they were afraid of him, and eventually loses consciousness and dies. Ruth leaves his body and approaches one of the survivors who is holding a crying baby. She tries to calm the child, saying there's nothing to cry about, and that they're all safe now. She looks over her shoulder in sadness at the corpse of Robert Morgan, and slowly exits the church, and roll credits.
So, are they all safe now?
I guess?
Because these survivors, if you want to call them that, seem to be fighting with the vampires, who are still around.
Yeah, but they seem to be killing them pretty easily.
They are, but they're still, like even Morgan was saying, their threat is in their quantities.
Yeah. I don't know. And the thing is, they can't even go around and kill them during the day, like Morgan was.
Yeah.
Well, I guess if they take their vaccine, they can.
I don't know.
I don't know. I didn't like the ending of this movie.
No, but that's almost to be expected. I mean...
The ending of the book would have worked so much better.
It would have, but...
And it would have been just as easy to film. Because in the book, they capture him, and he's in a cell, and he looks out through the bars of the window, and there's, like, survivor children outside, and they see him and scream and run off in terror. And that's when he realizes that he is now the monster. There's a new society, a new species, and all they know is that he's been going around killing them, and they finally caught him. And now he, the last of his kind, like, that's the line, I am legend.
Yep.
So much better.
It is.
But I guess this is like sci-fi horror B-movie European trash. So, I don't know. I enjoyed the movie for the most part. The ending was rough, though, man.
It's definitely the weakest part of the movie, for sure.
But it is also the best film version of the book.
Absolutely, without a doubt.
The Omega Man was pretty entertaining. I like Heston a lot. It veers, I should say, off course from the book almost immediately, so I think that's why I can like it as much as I do. But the Will Smith version is atrocious, and the Asylum version, like all other Asylum movies, I Am Omega, was absolute garbage.
Actually, that's one that I haven't seen.
Oh yeah, Mark Dacascos from what would you know him from? The Double Dragon.
Nope.
No, okay.
I mean, I've seen Double Dragon. I don't know who that is.
Yeah, he was one of the Lee brothers.
So not Scott.
Not Scott Wolf.
Was it Scott Wolf in that one?
Was it Scott Wolf? Scott something.
And
Not Scott. Other Scott. It's a great pandemic movie, though, yes?
What, this one?
This one.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it works really well for viewing today, specifically. And up until right before we started recording, I was thinking it's extremely timely for a remake. And I guess we are getting another film version, but it's a film from Brazil that comes out later this year.
That I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. What I do know is that it's getting a Blu-ray release from Kino Lorber this summer, August 31st. It comes out, which should be awesome. I'll be picking that up for sure. And there was one thing I never really thought about until also right before we started recording. Looking at different scenes from this movie and the subject matter and the way that it was filmed, like the monsters in it, there's no way in hell this had no influence over Romero's Night of the Living Dead. There are so many similarities.
It's possible.
You're leaving me with nothing here, man. Have you not seen Night of the Living Dead?
I saw it a long time ago.
Only once?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Definitely rewatch that movie, man.
Why do you have to have this moment every episode, dude?
Well, it's a classic film.
Yeah, and?
You should be watching classics more than once. That's why they're classics. Because you can enjoy them more often than once.
There's too many of them, okay? There's too many. I'm only one guy. I can't keep up with this.
All right, fine.
I mean, the movie just came out. How do I even have time to see it a second time? I don't know why you got to do this to me every time.
Sorry, man. Well, the movie itself went over very well. Looking at IMDb ratings, we had 6.8 out of 10. Even the tomato meter for Rotten Tomatoes at 79% with an audience score of 69%. And I think, yeah, between I would probably say 7 or 8 out of 10 on this. It had its weak spots, but it's also an older film with different technologies and different methods of storytelling that were more prominent in that era.
I mean, if you can't tell from the very first, splash screen of the font they use for the title of the movie that this needs to be looked at maybe with a different eye than modern movies, then you shouldn't be critiquing movies.
Accurate.
I'm thinking this one maybe an 8 out of 10.
Yeah. It's safe to say you'd recommend this movie.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, same. Even if you don't like older black and white movies, give this one a shot for sure. It's so entertaining. And you see that there's room for it to expand, and honestly, it's because there was stuff that was cut out of the book. So definitely check out Richard Matheson's book, I Am Legend. It's such a good story.
All right, well, besides the ratings, do you have any other facts or numbers or information for us?
Just a rough budget of estimated $300,000, and that kind of shows. I couldn't find anything about a gross, but honestly, I don't think that really matters because it's a movie that you're going to find over time, not upon its immediate release.
Fair. So, is there anything else you want to talk about, or should we dive into awards?
Let's go into awards.
Alrighty. So, that's kind of been the trend. You start us off with worst performance.
This one was really easy for me.
Okay.
And it's Emma Danieli as Virginia Morgan. I thought she was extremely rough.
Okay. I definitely considered her, for sure.
Oh, you picked somebody worse than her. Interesting.
Yeah, I picked Giacomo Rossi Stewart as Ben Cortman. However, I have it specifically written down as Vampire Ben.
Yeah. I disagree.
I don't think that him as a human in the flashbacks was too bad, but his mannerisms I mean, I get it's supposed to be emotionless, but the physical portrayals, like I was pointing out with the 4x4, it just didn't work for me. And that, like, again, that came across. And that's why I actually considered splitting it into two characters, vampire and human. And then I went back on it. And I'm like, no, maybe I'll go with, surprisingly, Christy Cortland as Kathy. But I mean, it's a child actor. How much do you want? And then ultimately I went back to, no, I'm dividing them up and I'm giving it specifically to Vampire Ben.
I disagree with you completely.
I don't care if you disagree with me. It's my award.
And that's why, for best performance, I selected Giacomo Rossi Stewart as Ben Cortman.
Now, are you dividing them or are you keeping them together?
Both.
Bullshit.
I thought Human Ben was awesome because you could tell he was the younger scientist who was a little bit more stubborn but willing to learn, but still hang on to previous beliefs, and then eventually succumb to those beliefs and not taking rationality over his own flawed belief of like vampires, which we know is accurate after some time.
Yeah, but that last part, that's writing, not acting.
Yeah, no, but even his acting there was great because like he played second fiddle to Vincent Price perfectly, and when Price's character referred to him as like a kid brother, that's how he came across on screen. He was looking up to Morgan. He was still trying to be his own person. You could tell he was the new guy. He wasn't completely comfortable, but he was still kind of cocky. And then as Vampire Ben, I thought the voice was amazing. You didn't like the physicality of it. I thought that was perfect. He was super stiff, almost visibly uncomfortable, but purposeful at the same time. I thought it was great, and I loved Human Ben. I love Vampire Ben, and honestly, like, there's no way that Vincent Price did a better job than Stewart.
So my pick for best performance is Vincent Price.
Ah!
As Robert Morgan.
I get why. I love Vincent Price. I felt like they gave him way too much and he wasn't able to handle it in this movie. So I'm curious to know why he's your best performance.
Well, I don't think that there's a single performance in this movie that's not flawed, without issue, for sure. Mm-hmm. And I mean, again, I said the same thing with Vincent Price. The physical acting, the staking, when he tussled with some vampires, like when he was leaving the church, for example, and trying to get to the car, the physicality was terrible. But it was also, in my opinion, terrible with Ben. I think that the highs for Vincent Price were higher than the highs for Giacomo. I don't know how you pronounce that. Giacomo. And the lows for both of them were just as bad. And that's why I go with Vincent Price.
Okay.
I think that, again, like I said, Ben as a human was fantastic. As a vampire, I didn't like it. As a whole, I think that Vincent Price wins it because his ceiling was higher, but they had the same floor.
Okay. I see where you're coming from. I don't necessarily agree, but you make a good argument.
I mean, hey, everybody's going to look at it with a different rationale, right?
Yeah. So, honestly, I think most people would pick Price, but just because he's Vincent Price. But you give good reasoning.
Well, I mean, at the same time, there's a reason that people look at it and say, well, that's Vincent Price, because he's earned that too, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Anyway, next is you with your most memorable line.
I actually have two. There is one that's a clear winner, but one I really like because it feels like it's an amazing line that just doesn't belong in this movie.
All right, Ben with his honorable mentions. Go ahead.
Well, it doesn't fit with this movie, but the line itself is awesome. And it's Morgan with, "Yeah, I own the world, an empty, dead, silent world." You know, like that belongs in a video game, not in this movie. But my most memorable line is one of Ruth's lines, and that is, the beginning of any society is never charming or gentle.
You know, I considered that one.
Yeah.
I did consider that one. It's a little surprising that we were kind of on the same wavelength there. However, I didn't ultimately go with it. I went with a little bit more of a telling line, in my opinion, on the plot of the movie rather than the theme or the tone. And it is when Vincent Price says to Ben during the flashback, "You'd prefer us to believe in vampires?" And then my pick, because that's the setup, is Ben's response, "If they exist, yes."
You're getting deep there, my friend.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't know, that just, it struck a chord with me because, and you know, I've talked about this in a few reviews now, characters that acknowledge horror tropes or creatures or monsters that in other movies don't. Like people, like I said, zombie movies, people don't know what zombies are prior to most of the time somehow.
So it's more of like a change in common belief.
Yes. And in this one, it's kind of like they're riding the line on that, right? Like they're on the fence about it because some characters don't want to believe it. Some characters maybe even have a different idea of what vampires are because they are different here. And Ben is the one who is completely open-minded to it and said, if they exist, yes.
Yeah. Wow, good pick. Very good pick.
And I mean, and it really does also highlight like Ben's mentality, motivations that, you know, we both agreed were quite well done. So, what?
I don't know why. You know how we were joking earlier about Ben forgetting where Morgan was?
Okay.
Like chasing him into the house?
Yeah, like he goes in and he's, "Are you in there?"
Yeah. Are you here? I just imagined him like wandering into the lab and Morgan's just sitting at his like desk looking through his microscope. And Ben just like stumbles and he's like, "Morgan! Are you here, Morgan?" Oh.
What?
Hi, Robert. I could just see him stumbling around. That's a comedy skit waiting to happen for people that actually know what I'm talking about. Never mind.
It's not going to fit in this movie, though.
Get on a memorable scene.
All right. Memorable moment for scene for me is, again, it's a little bit more of a telling one to the scenario, and it is when Vincent Price is watching the reels and starts laughing hysterically to only then break down and cry. Because to me, it was almost like I was watching the character's breaking point.
Yeah, for sure.
You
don't really know what else to say there. I mean, you nailed that one. For me, though, it's not so much character development or storytelling as it is setting up the tone of the movie. And for me, my most memorable scene is Cortman leading the vampires in the first siege on Morgan's house. Because I did have Night of the Living Dead in my head when I was thinking about, like when I was watching this, and it did set the exact same tone as that movie, even though this one came first. And I was like, yeah, it's campy, it's cheesy, yet it's slightly unnerving, unsettling, and I kind of want to know more. And that's how I've always felt about this movie. When I think about The Last Man on Earth, I think about that scene. Like, I can't not think about Ben yelling for Morgan to come out because he can't find his way in, and all he wants is to kill his former best friend.
I mean, it's definitely memorable because he swings that 4x4 in that scene, and
yeah, exactly. Like
for
there's
a different reason.
So many little things
so
that
badly
just stick
done.
out. It's perfect. Absolutely perfect.
I don't think we're gonna come to an agreement on that one, dude.
It's okay, man. You don't have to admit that you're wrong. I know it.
Sure. So why don't you get to your? I mean, we know what the recommendations are, but why don't you just kind of get to maybe like a closing thought?
The film is absolutely amazing, in my opinion. Yeah, it has some flaws. And while I say it's ripe for a remake right now, at the same time, I don't want to see it because it's very much a movie and story of its time. They've tried to remake it a few times now, and none of them have been even close to as good as this. So maybe just let this one go. Let it be a sole representation of Matheson's work. It's a fantastic movie. Not only is it a lot of fun to watch, but it's a movie that I think you benefit from watching by yourself. I know we recommend a lot of movies to be viewed with friends and they'd be much more enjoyable that way. I'd say it's more the opposite in this case. A movie that deals with isolation and alienation, the longing for other people or the way things used to be, best experienced by yourself. Definitely check out the movie. Definitely read the book.
Okay. I mean, I recommend this movie. I can't say I recommend it to everybody, because if there's anybody out there that's, I mean, maybe too close-minded to look past its age, the black and white aspect, things like that, I don't think that they're going to enjoy it as much. If there's somebody who maybe is not a fan of that stuff, but is open and minded enough to take the movie at face value and look at it, it might even change their mind on it. So I definitely do strongly recommend it, but knowing that it has to be to somebody who is okay with the era that it is made in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, hey, solid movie. We both enjoyed it. If anybody has any thoughts on the movie themselves or any of the remakes, or I don't know, I guess not remakes. I don't know what you would call them. But like, you know,
Failed attempts.
Well, because they're not remakes, right? But like they're other attempts, other adaptations. Thank you so much. Please share them with us. Let us know. We would love to hear it. You can hit us up on Twitter at BS Bargain Bin. We're on Facebook. In the comments section on YouTube.com. Again, we don't have a URL yet, but there is definitely a comment section. Please let us know. So Ben. That being said, what's up?
Before we get into that, I do have to say, if anybody does want to check this movie out, it is on YouTube for free. It's in the public domain now. You can find it on YouTube. You can find it on archive.org. Any DVD company is probably selling it for very cheap right now. I highly recommend anyone pick up the Blu-ray that comes out at the end of August of this year. Definitely just like, it's something you see. Love it or hate it, you have to at least check it out. Sorry, Sandro, you were saying.
No, but that's a good thing to mention, because if you follow our Twitter, I did tweet out that it was available and had the link to the YouTube video being in public domain when we announced that this was going to be one of our reviews. So maybe give us a follow too, because then you'll know ahead of time. That being said, Ben, this episode went great. We both loved the movie. What movie are we going to disagree on next week?
Next week, we're talking about 1989's Society.
For Bill Whitney,
I've never been paranoid.
fear plays a large part in family life.
I feel like something's gonna happen. And if I scratch the surface, there'll be something terrible underneath.
He's afraid his sister
Could you zip me up, Billy?
is not what she seems.
God, Bill, what's the matter with you?
He thinks his friends are out to get him.
Make waves, Whitney. You're gonna drown.
People are what they are. Now you have to learn to accept that.
He's about to find out the truth.
Why are you guys doing this to me, huh?
What, you've been living with these people all your life and you didn't know anything about this?
Is far worse than he could ever imagine.
If you don't follow the rules, Billy, bad things happen.
Didn't you know, Billy boy? The rich have always sucked off low-class scum like you.
Uh-oh, Billy.
Clarissa? Don't be so intense.
Now, some people make the rules and some people follow the rules. It's a question of what you're born to.
You never were one of us.
You know, you really deserve what's going to happen to you. I don't think so. Wait.
Can't you see they're setting you up for something?
You know how I hate to give you drugs. You're officially dead.
Don't go home, Billy.
No.
Bill Whitney is about to become one
Showtime, Billy!
with society.
Who are you?
Let me give you a hand, Bill.
In Beverly Hills, what you fear is only the beginning.
Anything for society.
Okay, I am completely blind to whatever the hell that is, but I'm sure we'll find out. Until next time, have a good one, guys.
All the best, guys.